Draft Mechanic is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com. Draft Mechanic, Episode 72.
On this episode of Draft Mechanic, we have Kickstarter previews of Vinyl and Filler, and recent plays of Sunset Over Water and Millennial Apartment Hunters. Then it's homebrewing all the way down, with a discussion with my Dungeons & Dragons group about the Homebrew campaign we've been running, and put Dungeons & Dragons on tap. We talk about the liquid kind of homebrewing in our beer segment, and in our final round we asked our Slack channel if they'd ever played any homebrewed RPG campaigns. So sit back, relax, grab a pint, and enjoy the show.
You've seen the future and it works to take a mile. All is for the best in the best of our world.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Danielle.
And Draft Mechanic is the podcast about board games and craft beer and anything we can do to tie the two together.
Here at Draft Mechanic, we like our beer like we like our board games.
Min-max for the most powerful party?
Having an excellent backstory, obviously.
Backstories are very important. I guess to give you a little bit of backstory on this episode, we are episode 72 now, and it's kind of funny because I think this is the first time we've really talked about RPGs in any amount at all that I can think
the only
of, right?
thing we might have done before is I think I might have talked about I Am John once when I played it at Mace last year, but that would have just been a recent play. We've got a recent play and a feature on RPGs and a final round.
Weird new world we're entering into. But hey, if this is your first episode of Draft Mechanic, this will be absolutely normal to you. And once again, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're a regular listener, we love having you back again. You can find us on the internet at Draft Mechanic or at Draft Mechanic on all your social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I guess actually just those three, the three that matter.
Well, we've also got a BGG Guild, a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. So if you're on Board Game Geek, come by and check us out.
Draft Mechanic is a member of Punchboard Media, the video, audio, and written content board game network. You can go to punchboardmedia.com to check out a whole bunch of other contributors there.
Also, if you are in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, we do 2 meetups a month. The first is going to be on the first Thursday of every month. That's at Good Road Cider Works. But our next one is going to be on the third Tuesday of every month. That is at Salud Cerveceria. So this month, that is Tuesday, April 17th. That is tax day. So do your taxes and then come drink some beer and play some games to de-stress from all that.
Hooray! If you happen to join up with Draft Mechanic between this episode and the previous one, you may have seen something else on the feed, and I
apologize.
I feel like I should at least briefly address that. So, this is a project myself, Aaron from Boards Alive, and Alex from the Dukes of Dice started like a year ago and recorded last summer, and then just promptly forgot about for a little while, and eventually we decided, hey, you know what? April Fool's Day is the absolutely right day to release this. We wanted to treat April Fool's Day rather than giving you some kind of joke or pretending, oh, no, there's no more Draft Mechanic, which wouldn't be any fun, but by actually releasing something kind of crazy and fun into the world. So our My Meeple and Me episode released last Sunday on the feed, and that is a one-off thing that we did that is kind of in honor of the McElroy brothers family of podcasts. They do My Brother, and Me, where they answer advice questions, and we said, you know, we should do that, but like board games. And well, that is a thing that exists.
I would like to warn anybody who's thinking about going back and listening to that, if they haven't already, that is tremendously not safe for work and is in a little bit of a more blue taste than our regular episode. So if that's not something you're particularly interested in, or maybe you have little ears in your podcasting vehicle, now is not the time. So if you are going to go back and look at that, know to expect that.
Yes. But if you did enjoy that, I would love just to hear if people did actually enjoy that, because that would be really cool to hear people liking that. We do have up on our website, draftmechanic.net, there is a page for My Meeple and Me that you can click, and maybe there will be a form that you can put questions in that maybe someday in the future we will decide it is worthy for us, or we are worthy enough to do another one of those things.
Assuming
no promises.
We don't get a cease and desist letter.
They're not listening.
I know.
And it's great. But yes, if you would like to check it out, it is on the feed, My Meeple and Me, with me and Aaron from Boards Alive, boardsalivepodcast.com, and Alex from the Dukes of Dice, dukesofdice.com. Okay, on to the games news. First up, there's an expansion coming for Kitchen Rush from Artipia Games. I'm really excited about this. Had no idea what was coming until I saw it on No Pun Included's video news. They do a weekly video news, Efka and Elaine at No Pun Included. Really cool video content for board games if you have not checked them out before.
And they actually have a Kickstarter running to fund them right now. So if you are interested in that content, or you view or consume that content in any way, you might want to go fund them, throw them a couple bucks.
They got some cool promos and I think a digital exclusive Gloomhaven campaign adventure.
Anyway, back to Kitchen Rush.
Kitchen Rush. So Kitchen Rush, we talked about back in episode 70, is a real-time kitchen management game, and they are putting out an expansion called Piece of Cake that will actually be on Kickstarter next week, so I expect we'll be coming back and talking about this. But it looks like, in addition to having some new ingredients and new desserts and stuff like this, they're adding another sand timer that is a 60-second instead of 30-second sand timer that will be a fancy upgraded worker that can do, like, special things in particular spaces. So I'm excited to see more about that, and hopefully we'll know more about that by the next time we record.
I'm jazzed for that.
Also in the news, I saw that there is an upcoming second edition printing of Race for the Galaxy from Rio Grande Games coming soon. This is something I didn't really expect to happen, but I guess it kind of makes sense. They're not actually changing any specific mechanics other than doing errata on a few cards, and they're updating some of the graphical style for colorblindness and ease of accessibility. I do also think it's really cool that they have made the entire rulebook 100% gender neutral, which is an interesting and welcome change, so that's really cool. They also announced that the sixth expansion for Race for the Galaxy, which is called Xeno Counter Invasion, will be released in 2019. We also have a second Roll for the Galaxy expansion called Rivalry coming out in Q2, and apparently a game called New Frontiers, which they are subtitling Race for the Galaxy the board game, coming out Q4 this year. I was really surprised about that last one because I kind of just assumed Terraforming Mars was already that.
This struck me with sort of the same feeling as when Carcassonne came out with the second edition. If you already have the first edition of Race for the Galaxy, which you should have an edition of Race for the Galaxy, which is my personal opinion, and you don't need that colorblind accessibility update, either because you have already somehow manipulated your first edition to help the colorblind gamers in your group, or you don't particularly need that accessibility update, I can't see anybody who has the first edition rebuying the second edition. Mm-hmm. It is such a small number of changes other than that one main colorblind issue that I think you said the errata is like 5 or 6 cards.
Yeah,
it's not
cards.
Tons of cards. And if you've already got a copy of Race for the Galaxy, I don't see this being a necessary buy. But if you don't have a copy of Race for the Galaxy, it's good to see it coming out and sort of coming to the forefront again and being like, hey, here's a new thing, because it might bring people who haven't had a chance to play that game into the fold. And they can learn with other people who haven't played that game. Because once you learn how to play Race for the Galaxy, new players are not necessarily the folks you want to play with.
Right.
That's just me, though.
I am really excited also that the 5 cards that they are changing, the errata cards, are going to be available on the Board Game Geek store as just a promo, so I'm sure you can probably pick those up at conventions as well. They're apparently also adding 6 new starting worlds, which are actually from the app that they're putting into the physical game. Hopefully we get to see those as well. I'll be honest, most of my Race for the Galaxy playing is on the app now anyway, because I play it constantly against the AI. I really like playing that on the AI. I can get through a game in like 10-15 minutes. And, I don't really need more physical Race for the Galaxy cards. We've got our base set, we've got the first expansion, and everything is just absolutely fine.
Yeah, I do play a good amount of Race for the Galaxy in the physical copy, but generally it is just with the base set and the first expansion. Because our group is that serves the number of cards we need for like a 5-player game, and we're sort of familiar with those cards at this point, so it really facilitates a nice quick game. Mm-hmm. But hey, I mean, if you don't have Race for the Galaxy, go get it. Mm-hmm. I'm not super excited about that Roll for the Galaxy expansion, but I know that's up your alley.
Oh, yeah. We haven't played Roll for the Galaxy in quite some time.
That's because I don't like it.
I know we have the app on the way, but I am excited to see more content for that game. It's really cool to see them kind of supporting both of these. And I'll be honest, I am kind of interested to see what this new Frontiers game is all about, because I've enjoyed both Race and Roll for the Galaxy, so give me a board game version that has a lot of the similarities of both of those things, and I will at least play some games of it.
The thing that's giving me sort of a glimmer of hope for that board game is New Dawn, actually, from Artipia, talking about Artipia again, where they took Among the Stars, which is already a really cool card game, and they turned it into a really neat board game. So my first thought was like, I don't need a Race for the Galaxy board game. I have Race for the Galaxy. That's a fine game. Mm-hmm. But to see how, that particular similarly themed game got turned into a really cool board game, and I'm sure there's lots of other examples, but since the theme is so close, that analogy lends itself really well. I'm interested to see what they might do.
So let's move on to some Kickstarters. As usual, we've got some updates from the last episode. We talked about Architects of the West Kingdom from Garp Hill Games. It was way funded with a whole lot of money, and that's about as specific as I want to get because I didn't take the time to translate the New Zealand dollars to American dollars. I'm sorry. But it was like $650 3,000% funded or something like that.
603,000%.
Yeah, that's a number, a real number. Fire in the Library from Weird Giraffe Games is sitting at 50,000 of the $8,500 goal right now. You've got till Thursday, April 12th on that one. A whole bunch of stretch goals unlocked. We've got more cards. You've got a mini expansion in the box. You've got nicer components. You've got an upgraded draw bag for the fire tokens and the book tokens. And also they expanded the art, so you have more of that great Beth Sobel artwork if you want it.
Awesome.
Third up, Mystery of the Temples, that we talked about in kind of a recent play Kickstarter as well, is at 26,000 of the $20,000 goal. This is the second set of games that Deepwater Games is bringing over from Emperor S4. This one ends next Tuesday, April 17th. You can pledge $25 for Mystery of the Temples, or you can pledge $99 to get Mystery of the Temples plus Sorcerer and Stones and Roundhouse, which are both kind of bigger box games. The Roundhouse is the one that has that really cool, crazy rondel mechanic that I cannot wait to learn more about. And if you missed Deepwater's first batch of games from the Kickstarter, I guess 2 months ago, that was Herbalism, Crows Overkill, Shatters over Kyoto, and Hanzi, you can actually also get a pledge level. I think it's $159 to get all 7 of these games together, shipped all at once, unless one of them gets lost.
Hey, no.
And man, Kickstarter is both coming in like crazy right now. We've had so many boxes come in the last few weeks, and it also is like the biggest batch of Kickstarters that I've seen since last year as well. We have 4 games to mention today in the upcoming Kickstarter segment, 2 of which we've had a chance to play, one of which is a huge, massive announcement, and one of them which is a cool new idea for games. So first off, the huge one, Fireball Island from Restoration Games is on Kickstarter. Wow, this thing looks huge and has a ton of stuff, and you can back it for $60. It's already $1.2 million funded after being online for a week, so we don't really need to mention a whole lot more about that. You probably already know about Fireball Island. If you don't, it's the one where you roll marbles down an island.
Yeah, if you need a giant plastic mountain in your gaming collection, this is the way to get it.
Mm-hmm. I do really appreciate that they have that $60 base level for that, but then they also have a whole bunch of expansions that they're going to have later on, and you can get them all early for like a $10 discount. I think it's like $135 or $120 for the whole every kit and caboodle kind of Shazam.
That's a heck of a lot of giant plastic mountain.
Yeah, and it is, they are taking Fireball Island on an actual tour of the eastern-ish United States right now. J.R. Honeycutt has the only prototype in existence, and he's driving from PAX East back down to Texas over the next 2 weeks. So check out Restoration Games. I think their Twitter and Facebook and website has that whole route. If you want to go, check it out. It's actually in the Carolinas, only coming to Atomic Empire on April 19th. It's a Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, if you are anywhere between Boston and Texas, give it a shot. See if you can check out this crazy new game.
Mm-hmm. Along the lines of things that are interesting and new, we have the graphic novel adventures from Van Ryder Games. This is a Kickstarter running through Monday, April 23rd. Now, these are a solo kind of choose-your-own-adventure-style graphic novel set, and they have interesting kind of modern game mechanics like hidden clues in the panels, character sheets, and all this other fun stuff. It's kind of like if you took like Time Stories and Unlock and then put them into a comic book kind of setting.
I really think it's neat the way they're doing the backing on this. You can back for 1 book for $19, or you can add additional books and up your pledge value, so $34 for 2 books and $75 for all 5 books in a custom slipcase. I think it's neat, though, because obviously the different stories are going to be very different types of experiences, so if there's something that really particularly appeals to you or really particularly doesn't appeal to you, you don't need to back all of them in order to get this experience. So I think that's pretty neat. Mm-hmm. You can also pay $90 and have them all airlifted to you in May.
I think that's really exciting. And I guess also these being books, it's going to be much easier and quicker to get them produced, packed, and shipped over here rather than having board games where they have a whole ton of components and all this stuff has to be assembled, put into the box, and all that so on and so forth. And the actual regular delivery is going to be June 2018. At least that's what they're estimating they're going to be able to deliver the books at.
So July or August 2018.
I mean, I think June is probably pretty plausible. I think it's a lofty goal, but again, probably easier to just mass-produce books at a book factory
than
we'll
have to see.
Put a bunch of stuff through the board game stuff.
Honestly, Van Ryder has been doing such interesting and fun games lately. Like, I'm really excited about Detective, and we talked about The Big Score, I think, an episode or 2 ago.
Yeah, it was a little while
So,
ago.
I mean, I'm really excited to see what this particular innovation from Van Ryder turns out to be.
Okay, so our third game that we're talking about is one we've had a chance to play. We have Filler from Green Couch Games, which goes live on Kickstarter this Wednesday, April 11th. This is one of Green Couch's small card games, which is kind of their bread and butter, obviously. We've talked about Rocky Road a la mode before. We talked about Before the Earth Explodes in the past. And just another one here, Filler, which is about collecting donuts. You're going to be able to back this one for $15. That is shipping included. And Jason Kotarski does say there will be an upgraded deluxe edition as well. He hasn't quite finalized what it's going to be as of time of recording, but I'm expecting it to come in a box of Krispy Kreme donuts.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be in like one of those dozen donut boxes, right? And there'll be 11 donuts and a thing of the game, just because it's about the same size.
Maybe you can get another advanced edition with like the bag of the tiny donuts. And there's not really a whole lot here. I thought there were going to be more here for me to joke about the ways that we could put a box of
Green
donuts.
Couch has not actually promised it will ship with donuts. It probably should not ship with donuts.
Please don't ship us donuts. But if you do no, don't ship us donuts. All right, so Filler is a quick, simple card game, plays in about 20-ish minutes for 2 to 5 players. And in this, you are going to be doing a set collection thing using these cool multi-use cards that have ingredients on them. They have the turn order selection mechanic on them, and they have some recipes on them. But basically what's going to happen is everybody at the start of the round is going to pick a card out of their hand for whatever turn order they're going to be. They have a time on them that will be your wake-up time, and you're all going to simultaneously reveal, and whoever has the earliest wake-up time will get to take an action first. The 2 kinds of actions you can take is either fill an order. You're going to have a row of the cards out in the middle of the table. It's number of players plus 1, and at the bottom they will have a specific kind of baked good and the recipe you need. That is a combination of the 5 ingredients of the game, 2 to 1, I guess actually 1 to 4 ingredients per card. Mm-hmm. And if you have, after you've played your time card, whatever other cards you have, also have ingredients on the left side of them, and you can play any combination of those cards to fulfill an order. The card you fill comes into your hand as a card you can immediately then use in a future round, while everything else you've played goes into a discard pile. This is important because the other action you can take, if you choose to or cannot fill an order on that line, you can also choose to restock, where you pull everything from your discard pile back up into your hand. So as the game continues, you're going to be getting more and more cards into your hand, and by the end of the game, it's not unlikely that you're going to have 12 to 15 cards maybe of just a whole bunch of different ingredients, a whole bunch of different wake-up times. So the game is going to kind of snowball there as you get to the point where you're able to wake up earlier or make really cool orders and kind of engine build a little bit with your cards there. The other cool thing is some of these cards with the recipe, they also have a special bonus. There are ones that will allow you to fill a second order on that turn. There's ones that will allow you to then also restock immediately, so you can fill an order and get everything back into your hand. And unsurprisingly, whoever has the most points at the end of the game is the winner.
No
of
way.
Filler.
Points?
Yes. I guess I should say about points. Some of the cards will have symbols at the bottom of them that will be either trophies, money, or stars for prestige.
And those are actually the way you get points.
Yes. Every symbol is worth a point, and any set of 3, if you have, 3 different symbols across all of your cards, you get an extra 2 points per set.
First thing I want to say is that we got this as a sort of prototype copy, so we can't really comment on the art or graphic design because they were obviously not final. They were obviously not finalized on the copy that we had because literally everything was a jelly donut. Your vol au vent, your millefleur, your Danish, they're all just jelly donuts.
Opera cake? It's a donut now.
The opera cake donut. No, so we don't really have anything to say on that, although everything else that we've seen from Green Couch Games has gotten excellent art and design production, so I am optimistic that this will turn out in the same way that all of the little Green Couch games have turned out, but we can't really say.
Yes.
I also do want to say that if you are planning on playing this at the lower player count, so 2 or 3 players, this might be one that you want to pass up. We've really found this to work a lot better with a higher player count, your 4 or 5 players, as opposed to 2 players. At 2 players, it is not really a great experience, and that largely has to do with the amount of donuts that are available each round. Because you're only putting out 1 more than the number of players, you're going to get a lot smaller variety in the things that are available each round in a 2-player game. So maybe you'll get a bunch of donuts that all require similar ingredients, and if you're not holding those, then you have nothing to do. Or you'll get a bunch of times where there's one that's significantly earlier than the others, and since you have fewer options, there's not a whole lot you can do if you're getting the later times, because one of the things we did find in this game is that if you don't get an early time relatively early in the game, you're going to be at a disadvantage.
You will start with 3 cards in your hand that have a variety of times, but you won't have like that 5:30 a.m. card that you really need at the very beginning of the game. So if you're not looking out for those and you're not grabbing that, you can find yourself at a point where you're just like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to do a whole lot this game. The game's only going to play 20-ish minutes, so it's not like you're going to be wasting the next 3 hours of your life. But I, like you said, really enjoyed this a lot more at that 4 to 5 player count where you have more options out there. The turn order is a lot more volatile from round to round because different players are going for different things, and everybody then kind of gets out of sync of when they're restocking or when they're taking the orders that are available to you. I do really enjoy having some of those cards have that extra fill or extra restock action on them as well, because it does give me that kind of exciting, ooh, I can do this and do this feel, which is always fun in a game like this that is a quick kind of card play game.
But that makes it even more important to get some of those early wake-up times in your hand, because those extra action cards are always going to go fairly early in a round, as long as the other people have the ingredients that are required to get them. And a lot of times you have a wide variety of ingredient cards in your hands. There's only, I think, 6 different types of ingredients in the game, 2 basic, 3 rare, and a wild. So you're not going to have like a huge spread of ingredients. You should be able, if you have a fairly full hand, to be able to get, one of those beneficial cards if there are a couple of extra action cards in the row and you're early in the turn order. But if you have, 9 o'clocks or 8:45s in your hand, you're not going to be able to get those additional cards, so you're less likely to be able to take additional actions, and you're put more at a disadvantage.
I do really enjoy the balancing of the cards as well, though. The earliest cards are the cards with the ingredient pools that you're going to want to use, so you do have to kind of make that decision. Do I use this card to wake up, or do I use this card to fulfill a whole bunch of stuff at once? You might have a card that has 3 ingredients, but it's also the earliest card in your hand, so you have to make that decision. Am I going to use this to wake up earlier and then spend 3 cards instead of the 1 card here, or am I going to wake up a little later and risk it just so I can conserve my cards a little bit?
Also, the cards that have the most points on them, because remember, cards are not necessarily points at the end of the game, and this is one of the things that felt a little bit disconnected from the theme to me. Only cards that have symbols at the bottom are going to score you points at the end of the game, and those are generally cards with not only later wake-up times, but fewer or no ingredients on them for later use. So if you're going to take a card that has a full set of symbols, which will get you 5 points at the end of the game, it'll get you 1 for each symbol and then 2 additional for the set, you're probably going to have like a 9:45 wake-up time on that card and no ingredients on it.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of a trade-off for that, but I think it's really important, and if you are a new player to this game, it's important that the folks who've played it with you before let you know that you need to get some early wake-up times in this game. If you don't, you're just going to hose yourself.
Yeah, and if you don't play it with new players, now you heard it from us, and you can, I guess, get the best donut. Get the very best donut. So Filler goes up on Kickstarter Wednesday, April 11th for $15 if you want to get that base edition.
Hopefully we've helped you decide whether it's right for your group.
Next up in Kickstarters, we've got Vinyl, and this is coming to us from Talon Strikes Studios. It's currently live, and it's running through Saturday, April 21st. And it's currently right around $20,000 of its $25,000 goal, so roughly 80% of the way there. This is a worker placement and set collection game about creating excellent record collections. You can back it for $38 for the base game, $48 to include an expansion and some additional cards, or the $350 wooden box super special edition with exclusive content.
There you go.
Estimated delivery on this is November 2018.
Vinyl is a worker placement game where you are going to be spending magazine cards to purchase records to create the best record collection by the end of the game. I guess thematically you're scanning through all these magazines to find out what's going to be the perfect record to fit into your collection. And there are 3 different kinds of collections you might have. You might have a pure collection, which is the same genre all the way through, or you might have a mixed collection, which it can have different genres but has to have similar threads, either 1 for a mixed 1 collection or 2 for a mixed 2 collection. And they're going to be worth different amounts of points depending on whether they're pure mixed 1 or mixed 2 and how many records you have in each collection. The records themselves are also going to be worth points, so it's important to set up collections that have valuable records as well as valuable collections. The interesting part about the worker placement in this game is when you send your worker out to part of the record store, maybe you send him to the magazine rack to get more magazine cards, or to the record bin or sale bin to buy records, or to the register to change out your loyalty cards. No matter where you send him, you're going to put him onto the primary action space, or I guess it's a meeple. It doesn't have gender. You're going to put your meeple onto the primary action space. If somebody else goes to that primary action space before you have a chance to move your meeple to a different space, you're going to get bumped from the primary action space to the bumped action space. This isn't really going to affect you in any bad way because you take your primary action as soon as you place your meeple. But you're going to get an extra benefit if they bump you to that bumped action space. So you're going to want to make sure that you put your meeple in a place that not only does you the most good, but also that another player is likely to go to so that you can get that bumped action space, which is just going to be a complementary action to whatever the primary action is. Maybe you get one of the cards that they use to purchase a record, or you're able to buy something from your layaway that you've sidled aside to buy later that you didn't have cards for. So you're going to get an advantage for being in the space that that person wanted to use. Like I said, you're going to get points for each individual record as you add it to your collection and for full collections as you retire them, but you also have 2 loyalty cards that you have for the game that you will score at the end that will give you bonus points depending on specific genres that they indicate that you should be collecting, or maybe the record labels that they want you to be collecting, or whether something is early or late in its decade. These can be switched out throughout the game, but you want to maximize the amount of points that you get in your secret objective cards, which is essentially what loyalty cards are. You're going to keep going until the record stack that you're refilling all of the record bins and sale bins from is depleted completely to the bottom. Then you're going to finish out that round and play one more round, and whoever has the most valuable record collection will be the winner.
Record collecting is kind of a theme that's near and dear to my heart. None of you can see it, obviously, because this is an audio medium, but the room that we record in is also my record room, and there are hundreds of records to the right of me right now.
There's too many.
Far too many. way too many. I have far too many mixed collections sitting over here. But this is the kind of game that I'm just like, yeah, give me this kind of theme. Give me this kind of exciting idea. And I really like the way that it is supported by the mechanics in the game. I like digging through the magazines, looking for stuff. I like the way that the cards are laid on the board because it does really kind of feel like a record store to me. You've got just stacks of stuff and you've got to be waiting for the right thing to pop up in the right place. And just kind of eyeing that sale bin is something that I've actually done in the past. I'm just like, I really want that special edition version of Odelay, but I want to wait until I could get it for $80 instead of $100. So I really enjoy those kind of interesting twists. The loyalty cards, I guess the secret objective cards, they're not as thematic as the rest, but I do still like having that as a game mechanic kind of thing because it did really inform the way that I was trying to go after different cards. I like, having the record label that it was pressed on being a thing that doesn't matter in terms of the buying and selling. You do get an extra point as you're building up more and more of the same stuff, but having that be a loyalty bonus is kind of fun because it kind of feels to me like, I will get pretty much anything that Sub Pop puts out in this particular area of years. So I really enjoyed the thematic twists and turns and the way that a lot of that turns into the mechanics in this game. And then as we got to playing the game itself is a heck of a lot of fun too. It's good worker placement. I enjoy the bumping, the way that kind of stuff works, where you kind of want to be in the way at the right time so that you get a little something out of it. And the mechanic of using those magazine cards, kind of like a Ticket to Ride kind of gathering mechanism for those, is kind of fun as well, because as you're drawing those off, you're getting more and more cool cards in your hand that gives you more flexibility on the records you want to purchase.
I really like the amount of different variables that you needed to keep track of in this particular game. Not only do you need to worry about what the genre of the records that you're purchasing are, and what the decade is, and what the condition is, and whether it's limited edition or not, but you needed to track who was putting out the album, what record label it was on, and whether it was early or late in the decade, if you had loyalty cards that mattered. There are so many different things that made this actually feel like digging through the record stacks for that perfect album. And if you're not really paying attention to all of those variables, if you're just buying a bunch of mixed one collections and trying to get things through, you're probably just not going to do as well. And that felt good. I really liked the way that if you were able to be patient and collect the right cards and wait for just the perfect album to finish out that 5-album pure collection, it was going to be paid back to you in the way that the game was scored.
Sorry, I was zoning out thinking about the records I've collected in the past and how they fit thematically. Realistically, like I said, this is a game that's like perfect for me because this is a thing that I do. And I feel like they did such a good job thematically making those things happen in the game and still making it mechanically satisfying and fun rather than it being, here's 500,000 different artists. It's, we were dealing with the genres, we're dealing with the years, we're dealing with two specific things of the mint condition and the limited edition. I just really enjoy the way it works. And the thing that I'm really excited about with vinyl, and the reason that I hope that it funds successfully in the next few days and gets onto stretch goals, is that they've got a lot of additional content planned. There's a way to get you can add on an expansion already that gives you another decade and another set of genres and all this other fun stuff. Some other little modules that go on there, like a top shelf set. And I think there's another one about chart-topping singles and stuff like this. And there's so many cool things that can be done in this theme in a gamified way that I want this game to be a thing like right now kind of stuff.
I also like that a lot of the mechanics feel very similar to other things that you might have played, but the game itself doesn't feel like it's entirely whole hog taken that game and reskinned it. Mm-hmm. We were talking about the magazine rack earlier, and the way that the magazine drafting works exactly like the train drafting in Ticket to Ride. If you take a face-up card and it is not a wild card, you get 2 of them. If you take face-down cards, you get 2 of them. If you take a wild card that's face-up, so you intentionally take something that is worth a better value to you, you only get to take 1. And if you've played Ticket to Ride, you're going to understand this immediately, but this doesn't feel like Ticket to Ride. The way that the record collections score is very similar to the way that beans score if you've played Bonanza. The more that you have and the harder that it is to get a set of it, the more it's going to be worthwhile. And you really need to balance when it is time to pull up a collection and retire it so that you have space to start a new collection, since you have a certain number of active collections, in this case 2, that you have at any time. So if you are looking out and seeing you have 4 records in that pure collection, but there's nothing really on the board that's going to help you with that, maybe it's time to pull that up and retire it and get the points for it before somebody else does. Mm-hmm. And that feels very much like Bonanza. But again, this does not feel like Bonanza. This feels like its own thing. And I like the fact that a lot of that is familiar, but not a ripoff.
And if you're looking for more info on vinyl, some other Punchboard Media contributors, Cardboard Horde, Eric Buscemi took a look at it. One of the new Punchboard Media members, Tantrum House, did a video preview of it, and Brandon over at the What Did You Play This Week podcast has been talking about it a good bit as well. So head on over to punchboardmedia.com, type vinyl into the search bar, and then continue scrolling, because a lot of people are talking about this game. I'm hoping that it funds, because I want to have this game in my collection. It is the card that I'm waiting to come up into the collection.
Nice.
Want a second opinion on some of the games we talked about on this episode? Check out some other great content creators at punchboardmedia.com.
So our first recent play this week is Sunset Over Water, which is a 2018 release from Pencil First Games. It plays 1 to 4 players in about 20 minutes and is designed by Eduardo Baroff, Steve Finn, and Beth Sobel. The art is by Beth Sobel, Benjamin Schulman, and Helen Zhu. This is a game of grid movement, set collection, order filling, and the zen of painting.
Yes. Such zen. First off, before I even get into the description, wow, the art. Beth, amazing. Full color landscape on all of... Okay. Anyway, so here's how you play Sunset Over Water. You have a grid, a 5x5 grid of beautifully illustrated landscape cards in front of you. They are full color, full bleed artwork on the cards, and up in the left corner of it, there is just symbols that kind of tell you specifically what particular features are on these things, be it a sunset or a waterfall or a mountain. But, they're going to have 1 to 3 symbols on them depending on what kind of features are in the art, which will be important later on, I promise. But wow, the art. So good. So this is a simultaneous turn order selection kind of game where everybody has a set of 8 cards, and they are all the same for everybody. And you're going to be picking one of the cards that will determine when you are waking up to go start painting for the day. The card will also have on it a number of spaces you're able to move and how many scenes you are able to paint on the way of your movement. So maybe if I have a card where I wake up at 6:45, I am allowed to move 4 spaces, but I can only paint 1 scene. So I'll be the first to move, which is great, and I'm going to be moving my painter meeple around these cards. I can choose one direction and move up to the range of my movement, and if I have 1 scene to paint from my card, then I will be allowed to take one of those landscape cards into my personal collection. If I choose a card that allows me to wake up later, maybe I'll have the opportunity to paint more or a different number of scenes, and I'll be able to take up more cards, which is important because, again, I'm trying to collect those symbols up in the top corners that have the different features of that particular landscape. Some of the cards also will limit the movement you can do. Maybe this one can only move diagonally, maybe this one can move all 8 directions, so on and so forth, which is going to be important for some of the movement and obviously moving around this grid of cards. A few other notes on movement: you cannot move over an empty space, so if you wake up later, your path might be blocked because somebody else already took a card in that direction. Your painter meeple can also move through other players, but not land on the same card as them, which is also important. Again, the earlier you wake up, the more options you're going to have to move around. Once you're done moving, you can take some actions to fulfill these commission cards up at the top that are looking for specific sets of icons based on cards you've picked up, and each round there's also a daily goal that will be awarded to the last player to do a specific thing. Maybe the last player to move diagonally, or the last player to paint a scene with only one icon on it. These are additional cards that you can get that they come into your personal collection, and all of these different cards are worth points, which, interestingly enough, you might not believe this, is how you win the game of Sunset Over Water, by having the most of these points.
Nice.
So, have I gushed enough about the art yet?
Yeah, I think you're good.
It's really good. It's great art. The design of this is really good. I love the non-standard player colors as well. You get to play orange, which is always a plus.
I do love to play orange.
This is the team that also brought us Herbaceous last year, which is a game that is a very quick and easy teach and has great art and is very fun and quick to play and feels rewarding at the end. And I'm really excited because I feel like they did it again with this game.
If this is starting to sound a little bit like Deja Vu, that might be because this is a lot like a game we've already talked about in our Kickstarter preview of Filler. They both have that wake-up mechanic where you're deciding based on the card that you select what time you're going to wake up, and that determines where in the turn order you are, and it's all simultaneous selection and hidden selection. So you are trying to make that type of judgment. And then based on what you have available to you, you will be taking other cards into, in this case, your tableau as opposed to your hand, and then using those cards to generate points later in the game. There are some differences, obviously. This has a spatial element to it, where you are moving around a 5x5 grid, and you want to make sure that you have available paths that give you the things that you are looking forward to. Here, you're not necessarily creating a deck, but you are establishing a tableau of symbols that you can later spend to fulfill the commissions, and at the same time trying to fulfill the round's directive. So, maybe moving diagonally or maybe not ending in a corner or whatever this particular round is going to give you points for. So while that selection and wake-up time mechanic is similar to Filler, this is a little bit more of a game where you are attempting to take the best advantage of what is in front of you at the moment, as opposed to creating a good engine with the hand of cards that you have.
One thing I really appreciate about this game is that everybody starts with a set of 8 cards that are going to be all of your turn selection cards for the entirety of the game. You're going to shuffle all of the cards and you're going to draw 3 off the deck at the beginning of each round. You're going to select one of those and the other 2 go back under your deck. The game lasts 6 rounds, so you're going to use 6 out of the 8 cards you have at the beginning of the game. And as I understand it, they're pretty well balanced. I don't think we had any that were exactly the same now that I'm thinking about it, but everybody had the same range of early to late and, multiple collections to multiple movements. So I really appreciate the fact that everybody's going to have the same basic chance of different cards that are coming out, rather than another game like Filler we talked about, where the actions you take are going to determine what kind of additional cards you have to then wake up earlier. I like everybody starting from the same footing on that. I think it's a really smart move, and knowing that the cards that I didn't choose go at the bottom of my deck means that by that final turn, the 3 cards that I have to choose from in that final round are the ones that I've continually been putting off using up until that point. So maybe they're ones that only allow me to paint one scene, or they have really restricted movement, but it makes it so that I'm thinking more about which cards I'm discarding because I know I'm going to have to use them later.
It also means that if I get a set of cards that are all late wake-ups, or all perhaps only one collection, or all only movement in cardinal directions, it means that I know that I'm going to have a turn later down the road where I get those cards that are going to give me more options. Maybe an earlier wake-up, maybe I get to collect 3 cards, maybe I have all of the directions of movement available to me. So anytime you get a hand that's not ideal, it just assures you that you're going to get a better hand later down the road.
One thing I will mention is that the size of the tableau does not change with different player count. So at 4x4 or 4 players on a 5x5 grid, it's going to feel a lot more crowded. When I played 2 players, we had almost no interaction whatsoever. So you got to just kind of decide what your group wants in that particular regard. If you want to have a lot of interaction and a lot of kind of messing with each other's routes, 4 players, you're going to get that for sure. We had that happen many times in our 4-player game.
There's still going to be that competition for the better commissions, though, because the commissions are not all valued equally. And things that are either easier to get because you can complete multiple commissions in a round, or that are more valuable are going to be taken first. One thing I really do like about this is you do get points at the end of the game if you have landscapes that you've painted that you weren't able to turn in for commissions. You're going to get a point for every 2 symbols on your remaining paintings. So if, say, in the last round, somebody takes that commission that you've been working towards for the last round or 2, you can still get some points at the end of that. And, if it's maybe 2, 3 symbol landscapes, that's 3 points. That's not an insignificant amount of points in this game.
I also really appreciate some of the other nice little touches that Pencil First puts into their games of this, kind of small box production. It does have solo play with a design by Keith Mashteka, the guy who did Role Player, but he also did the solo design for Herbaceous. So it's really cool to see them teaming up again to bring another game in that kind of 30-minute space with a great theme, great art, good design, and some extra content like that. I'm excited to play some solo games of this one, probably take it on the road with me at some point so I can just sit in a hotel room and play the game. Yay!
Awesome.
It's a good game and it's pretty, so I'm all for it. Yeah, do you have anything else you want to say about Sunset Over Water?
No, it fills your 30-minute filler game need really well. If you are in a situation where you need more filler games, this is one I would say take a look at. It is interesting and it is very well produced.
Sunset Over Water is available now. And now the time has come to talk about an RPG. Wow. 72 episodes in, we finally got it. Alright, so we've got Millennial Apartment Hunters, a 2016 release from Paracosm Press. This is a short one-shot RPG for 3-ish to 5-ish players. I don't know if there's any specific player count, but that's probably a good player count.
You need at least 2, because you need somebody to run it and somebody to play it. But beyond that, I would say there's not a max, but we played it with 5 players and 1 GM, and that was a bit much. I would say the sweet spot for this is like 4 or 5 players, 1 person to run it, and 3 to 4 to be in the apartment.
So this is designed by James D'Amato, and it is a description and storytelling game about finding apartments, but sadly, not hunting animated houses like I originally thought. I mean, come on, Apartment Hunters, like Monster Hunter, would be a pretty cool idea, but I guess they couldn't really go far if they're part of a building.
Yeah, probably not. No, this is definitely based on the HGTV show House Hunters, and when you read through the rules, he talks about it actually being based on tiny house hunters, because when they are showing off tiny houses and tiny house hunters, there's often a moment where the people who are buying the houses realize that they are going to need to make some dramatic changes to their lives and the way that they interact with everything in their house in order to live in a tiny house. And the idea of Millennial Apartment Hunters is that you are never going to get something that is perfect. You're never really even going to get something that is good. You start this game with a draw bag that is going to determine the characteristics of the 3 apartments that the realtor, i.e. the GM for this game, is going to show the players. At the beginning of the game, the players are going to determine who they are, what their names are, what city they are moving to, and how much money they have to spend on an apartment. Then the GM is going to draw 5 tokens from this draw bag. You start out with green tokens, red tokens, and black tokens. Green tokens are good things about the apartment, actual good things that you would want in a place where you live, original hardwoods, electric being included, that type of thing. Red tokens are problems with the apartment, but they're actual apartment problems, like it has centipedes in it, or, maybe there's a gas leak, or it faces a brick wall, that kind of thing. You are going to start with 5 of the green tokens and 8 of the red tokens. So you're already starting out at a disadvantage. You're going to get more bad things about your apartments than good things. But add in 2 extra tiles, which are black tiles. And those are just comically horrible things about the apartment. things that you would never actually see an apartment for, because A, they might not really exist in real life. Like in our particular game, you guys saw an apartment where the walls were made of human flesh. Mm-hmm. We don't know what's going on there. It probably is a Cthulhu thing, but we don't really know. They're just cartoonishly awful. And these are going to go into the bag as well. The other thing about those is that anytime they're pulled out, they're going to get thrown back in. So you can have lots of really, really comically terrible things with your apartments. Like I said, before you start describing each of the 3 apartments, you're going to pull out 5 tokens from the bag, and they're going to be placed in the middle of the table. The realtor can start describing the house to the players, but the players are also able to take one of the tokens and describe something that they're seeing. So it is really collaborative storytelling. So maybe I'm the realtor in our game. I draw out 2 greens and 3 reds in this. And I'm going to say, well, okay, it's got bay windows, and I take one of the green tiles. And then you take one of the red tiles and you say, yeah, but why are there all these ants? And so you're able to back and forth. If the players are either new to role-playing games or just not feeling particularly like they want to create the scape that they're in, the realtor can create the entire apartment and describe that for them, or not. Each of those tokens is actually going to correspond to a point value that's going to determine some other things about the apartment. Green tokens are worth 2 points, red tokens are worth 1 point, and the black tokens are worth -1 point. After you draw out the 5 tiles for each apartment, you're going to determine the point value for that apartment, and that's going to determine how much that apartment is compared to the budget that the players set at the beginning of the round. If you get a score that's sort of middling, 4 to 6, it's going to be right about on budget for you. Whereas if you draw a bunch of really good things about an apartment, it's going to be way out of your price range, and it's going to be, absolutely unaffordable for you. You're going to need to make some really strong sacrifices in order to be able to afford this really good apartment. Whereas, if I draw 2 black tokens at the beginning and 3 red, that's 1 point, and it's going to be very cheap. It's going to be under your budget. It's also going to be in the wrong state, and it's going to have some really, really seedy underbelly elements. So you go through describing each of the 3 apartments with these tokens that you have drawn from the bag, and at the end, the players are going to need to decide which apartment they're moving into, because just like House Hunters, you need to move into one of the apartments that you've seen. And after they decide which apartment they're moving into, you do sort of a post-mortem with them, and you come back and they answer different questions based on the apartment that they've chosen, how their life has changed after moving into the apartment, how they may feel like they have given up based on this apartment. And if you choose an apartment that is a high point value, if it is 9 points or above, meaning you drew essentially all green tiles, they have to say what they sacrificed in order to live in this apartment. So, this was twice your price range. What have you done? Did you sell all of your blood so that now you live in this apartment that is not haunted by Cthulhu? Or, what's going on? And that's it. Nobody wins in Millennial Apartment Hunters. It is a collaborative storytelling where you get to just have a fun time and run a 30 to 45 minute RPG and just make goofs.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed just the fantasy realistic setting idea of this one shot, and it was a lot of fun to play with. We were able to really just kind of riff off it for a while, and it was a really fun way to have a kind of off the wall kind of storytelling experience. I really enjoyed it. And it's definitely, like in a lot of these things, it's going to be dependent on the group, people who are willing to play along. What a surprise. RPGs generally work better that way. But I really liked the prompt and the setup for it. And everybody knows House Hunters. Everybody knows how it's supposed to go. So everybody will, in our group at least, jumped right into how unrealistic our expectations should be, because that's the entire catch of House Hunters. They're trying to get most amazing, hotel or house in the world for very, very cheap money. And we had to really come up with some fun things and really talk about that and come up with reasons why this would or would not work. And I just had a lot of fun with it. So thumbs up from me. I enjoyed it.
I think this worked really well for folks who aren't really comfortable with RPGs, because the realtor can actually create the entire scene of the apartment if that is what is needed. And anybody who's running this game is probably going to come into it with a list of things. Like I came in and I had all of the tiles planned out if I needed them. That way, if you get a group of players who are uncomfortable really sticking their necks out to make kind of weird suggestions, then the realtor can actually work you through. And you are able to just, as a player, make the decision and sort of play off things that are put in front of you instead of having to come up with those ideas on your own. This is also really great from the standpoint that it is on DriveThru RPG for pay what you want, suggested price of $5 because it's just a PDF. Any kind of tokens work for the draw bag. I think I pulled some tiles out of Azul and the Azul draw bag and we just, threw them into the bag. That's really all you need is somebody who knows the rules, a list of stuff that can be wrong with a house, and 15 of anything that comes in 3 colors. Mm-hmm. So it's really convenient. And the other benefit is that everybody understands stuff about what's good and bad about apartments. Anybody who's, ever lived in an apartment or a house, or anybody, who's lived outside of their parents' house essentially, can tell you, oh, this is stuff that's cool about it. But, you want a lot of natural light. You want the correct number of bathrooms, or any bathrooms. Or you've had that horror story where somebody lives in an apartment that has 3,000 centipedes, or
the tap dancing brigade upstairs.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that I had on my list. There was a tap dance studio upstairs. Or I had on my list, all the windows have been painted out black, because I remember growing up, my dad talked about his college apartment, and when they moved in, all the windows had been blackout painted, and they had to sit there with a razor blade and scrape off all the paint so they could get any light. It really lends itself to people having stuff to throw in, and I think that's really neat about it.
Cool. A lot of fun. So check out Millennial Apartment Hunters. Danielle, before we move on to the feature segment, you want to give a little preface as to what's going on here?
I do. This is an interview with my D&D group, which is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign, which is actually a homebrew. Our dungeon master, Dan, who you may have heard if you've listened to all of the back episodes of Draft Mechanic doing various segments, wanted to create a campaign where he changed the way that characters acquired skills, and also where all the characters were children. And that's really all the information you need going into this, because we go through a lot of what those changes were. But instead of just talking about Dungeons & Dragons at length, or talking about some other major RPG system, which neither of us is super fluent in. I mean, this is my first full campaign, and I don't think you've run any kind of RPG other than Millennial Apartment Hunters. We wanted to talk about the idea of creating your own campaigns, and what that means, and what it can be good for, and what maybe is an inopportune scenario for creating your own campaign. So this is about 30 minutes that we talked about after our last session, when we were just getting into a new arc of this homebrew campaign. But you will hear Dan, who is the DM, and there is introductions. You will hear the other 4 of us, myself and 3 other players, talking about what it's like to be children in this specific type of homebrew campaign.
Cool. Well, here's a break, and then there is your discussion. As a Viking leader, I know a good deal about murder, but not so much about Hong Kong or forensic science.
I've got you covered, Gunner. As a forensic scientist, I hate when I see the same crimes over and over again. Deception Undercover Allies, the new expansion for Deception Murder in Hong Kong, adds 130 new means and clues cards, many of which capitalize on some of the situations less frequently encountered by us forensic scientists, so you'll never have to see the same crime twice. It also let me hire a lab tech who can check if a certain item was used in a crime at all. But watch out, because they hired some new detectives too, and one of them might be an inside guy spreading rumors and confusion. All seasoned Hong Kong detectives should check out Deception Undercover Allies at greyfoxgames.com.
Ah, good. Now they'll never find out about the... I saw Bjorn just yesterday tending a whole colony of bees. Must have been him.
Grey Fox Games. Quality games, cleverly crafted.
That's totally the bees.
Alright, so we are here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the sort of homebrew campaign that this group is playing for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Dan is our DM, and he is running the campaign. He came up with the system we'll be using, and he'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But before we get started, I figured you should meet everybody who is in the campaign and their characters and learn a little bit about them, so when we invariably mention people by their name, you know who they are.
My name is Nathan, and I'm playing a character called Zavir, or Zav for short. He is the oldest of the 4 adopted siblings, and he is a cleric.
My name is Steven, and I am playing Alfred, who goes by Frey. He is actually one of the non-adopted siblings. I am a half-elf, half-human, and I play a fighter.
I am Tamara, and I play Aoric. He is a 13 and 3/4-year-old bard, and he is delightful and makes friends with everyone.
And I'm Danielle, and I play Rowan, who is a gnome wizard and is very squishy.
I'm Dan. I am running this adventure with a whole bunch of children, so please help me.
I think we should probably start there. What is sort of unique about this campaign is that we are all playing children. We started with sort of nerfed stats for being young, and since we mentioned being adopted, because we had to bring lots of different kinds of children together, everybody except Frey is adopted into a family that is taking care at different points. Stav and Aoric were both adopted when they were children, correct?
Mm-hmm. Baby.
Just a little tiny baby?
Little baby.
And Rowan came into the family about 2 years ago, I think, at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Who is still the size of a baby.
You know what? I'm perfectly tall for a teenage gnome.
So yeah, I wanted to run a bit with a game that's a bit different. Again, we're using 5th edition with some homebrew elements that modify things slightly. But I wanted to start with children who were full of curiosity and might get hurt and might learn from their experiences, but also had the freedom of creativity to get into trouble and to become who they want to become. As was mentioned, we started at level 0 with no class features being assigned to the characters, and they were allowed to try whatever they wanted to. I put in some mechanics to define what trial meant success, and those I kind of adopted from Burning Wheel by Luke Crane. And let's see. As they tried and succeeded at things, they learned how to do them. And so they grew from pre-level 1 to level 1. And ultimately now they are somewhere between level 3 and 4. And that just gave the experience of growth. At least that's what I was going for.
Now, one of the things that we all started with besides our regular character sheets is you have a sheet that we're using that allows us to gain pretty much any feature that we want. So I know, Frey, you have some cleric features, as I do as well. I think almost everybody has Firebolt, Firebolt for some reason.
Only Aoric missed out on that one.
And I'm certain that one of these, or a picture of one of these, probably mine, is going to be up in the show notes if you're listening to this. But it allows you to get better at things by doing a disadvantage check at least 3 times. I think any spells or attacks or feats are 3 times, and then to improve your stats, it's a 6 check mark trajectory to improve a stat by a point. So realistically, we're actually improving our stats a lot quicker than I think we normally would in a regular campaign where we're leveling up.
Well, I think you're increasing your stats to get up to adult levels. At some points, I'll curtail this growth, as I already have for some of the characters. They've reached some pretty high levels, and I said, nope, that's enough. You're going to stop at 16 or 17. Not age, but numbers. The character sheet attachment that I created was just a way to log progress in becoming proficient in a variety of things, be it weapons or skills, as those are necessary prerequisites for turning level 1 in Dungeons & Dragons, but also all of the class features, and they're all tied to an attribute, and as you exercise your strength more, you become stronger, and it just, there was a lot of kind of actually Morrowind-esque logic to that, if anyone's played that from a while ago.
Skyrim is the...
Yeah, but Skyrim doesn't follow the same math. It's simplified. Anyway, I come from a background of Pathfinder, which has a whole lot of fiddly numbers, +1s and +2s out the wazoo. So I kind of wanted to bridge the gap a little bit from the simplicity of 5th edition and just throw in a little bit of extra computation for the players to track their progression and their growth. I think what this has ended up in, you mentioned spells, is that and this makes sense in character, is, hey, one of the characters learns how to do a neat trick, and everyone gathers around him and says, hey, can you teach me how to do that? Which is fine. That makes sense. And so there's the opportunity for them to learn from each other. Again, I'm not restricting based off of a particular class. So if someone learns Firebolt, or if someone learns Sneak Attack, you can all try to learn from each other to grow in that regard.
And I think that certainly was helpful when we were trying to get to level 1, because I know we were doing a lot of helping each other at that point.
Yep.
Less so now. I mean, I think we still will help each other with stuff, but not like 3 or 4 times a night like we were doing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, everything at disadvantage, we would have just sat there and been like poking a bush and dying from it, which may have almost happened later anyway. Now, Dan, we are in our 4th arc, I think.
Yeah, you could call this the 4th arc. Definitely it's part of the 3rd or 3rd and a half.
Okay, if we call it the 4th for this rest of the sentence, you have written 3 of the arcs that we've been going through. We went through one that was from the Yawning Portal.
That's correct, yeah.
But you've written the other 3. When you were coming up with these stories, how did you take into account that we weren't really running 5th edition when you were implementing the stories?
Well, I mean, all the mechanics are in 5th edition. And basically, I just used the flexibility that's inherent in the system to give you guys options and opportunities to try different things. You know, something I want to emphasize is that one of my goals was, out of frustration for most games, encouraging my players to not always kill things. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to run away or to sneak around or to try something different. Yes, you can stab it, but hey, you're small and squishy. You might die. And I didn't really want the characters to die, so I didn't aim for that goal. But if you made some bad decisions, that can happen.
I've only died 3 times so far.
You...
I only died once.
I only died once.
Yeah, that's the true story. So the system, of course, gives all of the flexibility that's necessary. What enemies I choose, what stats I modify as needed. Again, when starting off very early in this, I was looking at some of these damage dice in the monster manual and being like, no, that's going to kill you outright. So I was forced to put you up against smaller monsters, or, you know, weakened versions of these monsters because you had 3 hit points. And that's not very many.
That's like 1.5 fish.
So there was some modification there, but I still wanted to give the opportunity that you felt endangered. Not hopelessly so, but hey, you're kids and you're crawling around a dungeon or a cave or whatever the case may be. You know, what does that feel like? A little scary, but a little exciting. That's what I was going for.
And it has definitely been that.
Well, how do you guys feel about the fact that you can essentially do anything? I know you all have other games going on, right?
Yes.
So how is the fact that you can make really whatever character you want, you just have to really try hard enough as many times as you need to make that happen? How has that changed the way you sort of formed your character or played your character?
I can't speak for everyone else, but I do know that for me in the beginning, it was a breath of fresh air because we were able to learn things, and as a child adventuring, when I saw someone doing something that I thought was cool, I did the child thing and was like, hey, can you teach me that? And that was how I learned most of the things that I did. Later on in the game, when we were working towards leveling up and getting more into a class system that would work for the adventures we're going on, I then started taking the things that I wanted to do and lining them up with something that would work for that. So it was weird to work that opposite direction than knowing I have to do this and then I have to find a way to get to those points. This is what I want to do. Now I need to find a way to make something work for that. So that was very fun for me.
I haven't veered too far off of the bard path. I've done most of the things that stick with it. But one thing that's been kind of interesting is that on my sheet, I have tried and succeeded things, maybe once or twice. So I've gotten to use Spider Climb once because I succeeded, but I actually never made the 3 total checks to just have the spell permanently. So it's actually kind of neat to just have had that in that moment, used it, and it was important, but I don't have it forever. So it's kind of neat that those things will, as a child, you're like, ooh, I'm going to try this thing. I did it. Ooh, I can't do that thing still. And that seems, that flavor seems kind of realistic that, you got lucky that one time, but you're still not good enough to continue doing it just like you can any day.
Yeah, it was fun exploring, and especially before we were like level 1 and started kind of more going down our select paths. Also in my sheet, I've got a bunch of stuff that some of them I even did succeed on, but again, I'm not really going to use again. They were just like one-off things and stuff that were just fun at the time, but again, didn't really help what I am now considering my character's eventual ingrowth, which, again, at the beginning, we weren't really thinking it was a fun to just kind of explore and pull in all sorts of different aspects of D&D that you normally wouldn't see mashed up together.
I've certainly read more spells playing this campaign than I've ever read creating another character, because we're just there like flipping through like, what can I do that's actually going to help me? What can I try? And that's been really interesting.
I remember at one point we wanted to make something cold, and we didn't really know how we wanted to make it cold or if it was going to work, but we just knew we had to find something that would make it cold, and then we would try to do it. And I don't think anything ever really ended up being what we wanted. Because, like, magic heat, magic cold isn't really cold.
A lot of fire spells can make fire, but not a whole lot of cold spells actually make anything cold, which is...
Yeah, they just freeze things.
Yeah.
So I did want to comment on the idea of getting lucky. Trying something and it works and getting lucky. Well, I think to support that and kind of to counterbalance the fact that you are children, I instituted this concept of it's borrowed from Burning Wheel, the Die of Fate, except I modified it to be a D20 every 20 minutes. So after 20 minutes of gameplay, I put out basically an automatic success. So if they need to pull something that they don't know, or they really need to succeed or get a critical hit, they have this very powerful, mechanically, piece of plot that they can spend. And it's not everybody gets a D20. There's one for the table, and whoever wants to use it first can choose to do so.
No matter how preposterous of a reason.
No matter how much I grin and bear it. And then after 20 minutes after it's spent, it comes back and they can reuse it. And I felt, again, these are small children and they're going to be helpless in a dangerous world. So I wanted to give some agency back to the players to have control of the narrative. And I have, as I alluded to, perhaps regretted some of that, but it's made for some great moments and forced me to react to that moment as a lot of things change around my plot.
And you've been really good at letting us try whatever we wanted and take those successes and roll with them. Because I know at one point, one of the things that I have is Channel Divinity from the Nature Cleric section. And there's really no way to do that if you don't have a divinity. But, we were able to make it work. And I know you've been really open to allowing us to use stuff that we've managed to get into our characters, even if it's not really functional without a little bit of tweaking.
Of course, yeah. The concept of an adventurer being one thing, okay, it makes sense, and it limits choice, which can be good for starting players. But letting children explore everything around them and being curious about magic and just wondering, hey, can I bend reality in this way to make something different happen, like spider climb? I know that spiders can climb, maybe I can do that. And the why or the how behind it doesn't matter. It's just, hey, that sounds like fun. So I wanted to give that flexibility back to what everyone wants to do with their characters.
We've talked a lot about the fact that we're playing children here, and from a narrative perspective, I think that's also something interesting to look at, because the characters we are all, I think, almost all teenagers at this point. Mm-hmm. You and I are about a couple of months apart, so we're the youngest. You're
12 and a half.
12 through like 16, right?
12 to 16.
So they're not going through like adult adventure things. They're going through weird kid stuff, and I think that really has brought an interesting story element to our game. Have you had any moments where you had to realize, like, I'm playing a kid, I have to do weird kid stuff?
I definitely have. It's been really interesting trying to look at the interactions that we're having, things that when you normally would walk into an in character in a standard D&D game, you know exactly what you're doing. You're just going to go there, you're going to spend. And as children, we're walking into this place without our parents, and we're like, do we talk to this person? Does this person do this? And then it's taking a lot more thought and effort on our part, which sometimes runs the game out, but it also makes it more fun in the view of what would I do if I was actually doing this at 12 years old. I would be scared. I would be hesitant. So it's been really interesting to get a shot to do that in a D&D campaign.
Well, I mean, your character in general is going through some, like, hard lessons about the fact that your parents aren't always right.
No,
now.
our parents consistently send us out to die, so that is a very
Your
hard
parents.
thing. Yes, my parents consistently send us out to die, so I am very much questioning that now, especially after 12 years of relatively uneventful living.
Let's be honest, I should not be a parent.
Well, good news is you're not. But Zav is going through weird puberty things, which is kind of fun to make fun of him for.
Zav's defense, that was largely put on him by you guys, but now it's canon, so... he has
to be honest, you're all in weird puberty phases, so that's up to you how you want to play it.
What's puberty?
You're 12. You're getting there.
I mean, the halves elves might not actually be there yet, right? Depending on what half of their physiology is manifesting.
Let's not think about that too much.
No.
But I did put in a couple, hopefully comedic, awkward moments where
All the time.
where Zav was confronted with things that he maybe hadn't seen before.
Butts.
Mostly naked butts.
Largely butts, yeah. And, how's a 15 or 16-year-old going to react to that in front of his family?
It was as awkward as we could imagine.
I have a little 6-year-old girl that is just enamored with my character, and he has absolutely no interest in this person whatsoever, and she will just not leave me alone. It's really fun to play, but it's something that I definitely have to keep up with because it keeps coming up.
I mean, Aoric particularly is so full of, like, youthful exuberance all the time, and then Sydney, who is the 6-year-old girl character, will come up and suddenly, oh no, this is childish. This girl is ridiculous, which is how kids are. Like,
right.
They think they're hot shit, and until they're not, until they're just kids again.
Yeah.
I am twice your age. You're 12. Stop it.
So I know you don't want to spoil anything going forward, because that would be cheaty of me to ask, but do you feel like the system that you've created has room to expand and to grow with further campaigns? Because obviously we're getting a little bit farther up into levels 3 and 4. We're getting to, like, actual adventure levels as far as the system is concerned. Do you feel like the homebrew that you have is going to grow with the characters?
So I want that to be your decision. My point is not to make tedium. I would love to have an interesting mix of class abilities show up. And maybe that turns into rewarding you guys for full level multi-classing as opposed to piecemeal multi-classing. And we'll have to talk about what that looks like. But I see no reason that if this is working, that we diverge from it. Other than it gets kind of boring, or your list of class features that you partially have gets very long. Again, from my perspective, I do not know how much I want to keep you as children, or do I do a time jump and now you're level 5 and you're 25 years old or something like that. There's a lot of opportunities and flexibilities for what you want to do. What I want is just basically to create these set pieces that you get to interact with, give you the control and command over what's happening in your local area. We've visited a couple towns and cities, but you've always come back to home, so you're still in the same region. And it's a challenge for me to think about what you might do or how you might interact, what decisions you're going to make as these loose cannons, and what that does. But that's the joy that I get out of dungeon mastering, is not trying to kill you guys, but trying to set up interesting interactions and then pull my hair out when things go awry.
Surprise! You had no idea what we were actually going to do.
And I rarely do.
Yeah, let's take that magic portal and just throw it in the furnace. That sounds fun.
I think it worked fine. It kept the evil wizard from coming back.
That it did.
So what have you guys learned? What are the morals of this story? Wizards are evil.
Very.
Adults are stupid
Adults are stupid.
and kind of a hindrance.
Yeah, actually.
Talking to gods is problematic.
Correct. Although pretending to talk to gods is fun.
Pigs make good mounts for gnomes.
Roywin has a pet / mount pig, hog.
Yeah, his name is Mark. We come from a village that raises pigs, and one of the things that I bought with my first amount of gold that we got for killing the evil wizard is for some reason, pigs as a trade good are grossly undervalued. So I was able to purchase one of the pigs, and his name is Mark, because I wasn't allowed to ride a horse by myself because I was too small. So I have a Mark. He doesn't really come with us because I'm afraid he's going to die, but he's a good mascot.
So the adventures that you guys have run through, briefly, I did a few episodes as kind of an interlude, or rather an introduction to each of the arcs that have happened so far. And then, so 2 or 3 sessions to talk about what's going to happen, and then 5 or 6 sessions to go through what actually happens. The first set piece was, I don't know, looking back, I don't know why you guys were sent out on that mission, but hey, it happened. But there was certainly an attack and some evil happening, and the parents, who are retired adventurers, decided to stay home in the village, and the children, who were, I don't want to use the word expendable, but less needed in village, were set out to explore and find out what had happened. And they came across a number of calamitous things, somehow survived, came back as heroes.
Learn to dance.
Later, you learned to dance.
That was the second one.
The second arc was something that I had been working on for years. A very detailed, interactive dungeon that I did. Less so sort of a dungeon, but it was actually set in a garden. And I had jam-packed that full of puzzles and clues and information, and some combat, couple deaths. And then the third setting, which we just finished up, was from the Tales of the Yawning Portal. We did Sunless Citadel, which is for character classes 1 through 4, or class levels 1 through 4. And that went pretty interestingly. Again, different decisions were made, and I'm forced to scramble for, who's moving where, and how does this react? But I think they all had a good time.
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess the big question is, how does what this campaign has become stack up to what you wanted to run when you wrote the rules or changed the rules? How has this come to fulfill or not fulfill what you wanted?
What I had thought of originally, and this is not an indictment of any decisions you have made, was that there would be more interest in class features, combining a rogue and a ranger together, or something like that. And what happened was you all learned a bunch of spells. And you all learned a bunch of spells from each other, which is fine. I allowed that to happen, and that makes a lot of sense in a number of ways. But I was, I think, hoping that you would have diverged more as characters and said, I want to be, the player, have this concept in mind, and I want a fighter who's also a sorcerer. So you have class levels in fighter and sorcerer. Or I want to be a bard who is also an archer ranger person, and so you have class levels in both, or certainly class features in both. And that is not what happened. That's fine, but that's what I had in mind at the onset.
I have a feeling it may progress in that direction now that we don't all die as soon as something breathes on us.
Also, we've already largely started to pull out the spells that we individually like and starting to stick to those a little bit more. It might be time, or probably will be more willing to go into more of the features and feats.
I mean, do you have, as players, have comments on the decisions that you've made or what you had hoped for when I opened this door?
I mean, I personally think that where I was going, I was very fortunate in finding a class that actually fell into, which I am still very new to D&D. I did not really know what options were available, so when I picked a fighter defender that I wanted to be, who also cast spells, finding out that there was a fighter class called Eldritch Knight helped me kind of wrangle that in, but without really limiting me. So this game has actually helped me learn more about the D&D world than I was in my just other campaign that I was playing in.
Yeah, I should point out, I think Danielle asked this question, that everyone is playing in different games right now, although that's not entirely true. But when we started this a year and a half ago, whose first game was this? In 5th edition?
Mine, certainly.
Mine as well.
Yeah, raising your hand does not help me.
Yeah, no,
But Tamara and Stephen, you guys were both relatively new, although
Yes.
Yes.
you had a few sessions under your belt
Yes.
with another group. Yeah. So, pro tip, actually maybe this is a good idea, but I was going to say pro tip, don't get new players to play with system modifications. However, the converse is maybe experienced players are less willing to look around and poke the edges of the system. They're probably going to min-max and power level and exploit the system, whereas you guys are, it looks like, following character decisions more than power decisions.
Yeah, like not all my character decisions were very smart. I've made them now, and that's fantastic because it all is what happened in the game for, what I needed in those moments.
Mm-hmm. And I also want to commend you, again, maybe it's because we're being children, is that you spend a lot of time in character, making bad decisions, quarreling a little bit, mostly in jest, but not entirely in jest, and then just getting at each other's throats and again behaving a bit like immature teenagers who don't know how the world works. And I think that's an important part of this is getting to explore that side of being a person and being a character. And I want to say that you've all done very well with that.
Part of that is another thing that I really like about what we've done with this campaign is the other campaign that I am in, and what I've seen from other D&D adventures is you start a campaign with people who are already made their own characters, they already have their own lives, so you all have your different agendas and goals. To me, the source for this campaign is we are family. We are all starting from the same point. We have different backstories a little bit, but it has definitely led to a stronger feeling of camaraderie in the group, knowing that, I am not here for my own goals. I'm here to make sure that everybody else is. And not that you don't eventually get there with other groups, but starting feeling like you have to understand these are your siblings. You have to, see them as such is a different view for me.
I think instead of with fully formed characters, what we all came into this with was backstory predominantly. We knew what direction we wanted to take our characters, and we knew what we had rolled to start with, which for me actually turned out to shape more of my character than I thought it would. we rolled our initial stats, and I, in true form, rolled absolute garbage. And starting as a child, so nerfed that way, and a gnome, so not particularly strong to start with, and rolling poorly, a lot of my decisions went along sort of the wizardy track, just because that's the way you don't die. You stand far away and shoot magic at things. But beyond just knowing what numbers I had to work with, a lot of what I came in with was backstory, and I know... Especially, I know that you, both Frey and Eoric, have story that I don't know. I know we are getting a lot of Zab's backstory through story, but we're still in the dark about a lot of it. And it's sort of fun to understand that these people are fully formed characters that you started a campaign with, but you don't know a lot of what makes them the fully formed characters that they are, even if you are family. Because you don't know, like, we all gave Dan our backstory, but we didn't give each other our backstories, because they're your private stories, and it's fun to create a campaign where you get a surprise every once in a while. Oh, so you did talk to Mask. Oh, interesting.
And my character wants to be bestest of friends with Danielle's character, so every little ounce of information that he gets, he's so excited about it. And it's really fun to kind of like dig into that to try and get closer as two characters.
Which is kind of weird, because most of my backstory is sad, because as the latest comer to the family, I am more recently orphaned than the rest of them. So, like, a lot of my emotional moments, and I have to say, honestly, there have been a couple of actually really emotional moments that my character has had, and then thusly I have had. Like, it's a nice sort of thing to turn around to Eoric, and Eoric's just jazzed to have learned something. I'm like, okay, it's fine. This touching thing has happened. But also, oh, there's my brother, and my brother is totally excited to have this moment. I think that about covers everything I wanted to ask. Does anybody have anything they want to add that I didn't think to ask that is exciting about this, or is different about this than your campaign? Or
we've certainly had more role-playing in this game than I've had in any of the lots and lots of other games that I have played, and I think it's because of the way that Dan has set it up to be less stabby, and that has been really fun. I think a lot of pre-made campaigns don't set you up for that. So it's been a really nice experience to get to play with that with such a fun character. I couldn't do that with all of my characters that I've created, but it's really fun.
I will say this one actually has made me think about other things I can do rather than stab in my other campaign. Like, there are points where it's like, you enter this room of goblins, and your first instinct is just to wipe all of them out because it's a room full of goblins, but then you're like, I don't have to do that all the time.
You don't.
I'm glad to hear that. Of course, I mentioned that's what I'm trying to encourage here. Problem solving in a different light. In fact, what they're about to face, and this isn't really spoilers because I told them, what they're about to face next is going to be all problem solving, hopefully without stabbing, because they are in a hostile area, I would say. And if things go bad, they're going to go very, very bad very quickly. So they're going to have to negotiate this a bit more tactfully.
Oh.
Not your forte.
No.
Tact sometimes is just keeping your mouth
Also, a
shut.
bunch of kids are such good negotiators when it comes to adult politics.
It'll be fine.
All right, well, thank you for taking the time to talk about this. I'm really excited about it, and I hope that everybody is interested to hear about it.
For more information on the beers we chose to pair with today's game on tap, check out the show notes section at our website, draftmechanic.net.
So after a feature like that, the only thing I could think of that needed to go on tap was Dungeons & Dragons. You know, all of Dungeons & Dragons. It seemed reasonable and not ridiculous at all.
Very ambitious. I like your style.
I will say, before we get into this, that we have used one of these beers before in our role player on tap. Mm-hmm. I gave you a couple extra in our on tap, so that should hopefully make up for that, but role player is a game about creating a role-playing character, so it kind of makes sense that there would be things that are in common.
I feel like after 72 episodes, we're allowed one repeat.
Maybe. First up from Paladin Brewing Company in Austintown, Ohio, is D20 Cream Ale. This is a 5.6% ABV, 20 IBU cream ale with a clean, crisp, refreshing flavor. It's also got some sweet, rich notes. It is canned regularly, and Paladin has, I think, like 16 of their 18 beers on tap at any point, so it is a rotating availability, but it's a fairly common rotating availability. They have it on right now, according to their website.
Okay. Up next from Bottle Logic Brewing in Anaheim, California, we have Roll for Initiative. It's an imperial stout that clocks in at 13.8% ABV. This is a big one. This is part of their Stasis specialty bottle project, and it was just released in late March. It's on tap now every now and then in the area, but you can look quickly for some bottles. There are probably still some bottles out there if you look for them. It's got all the things you want in a super great imperial stout. Chocolate, vanilla, cinnamon notes. It's got a boozy quality. It's dark, super malty, just everything that is good in imperial stout. Some of our friends on Untapped have had it and rated it very highly.
Honestly, most of what I've seen about this particular one says that the cinnamon is very strong. So if you're looking for something that is very cinnamon forward and maybe a little less on the vanilla notes, this is something that you should check out.
I am a cinnamon fan.
Next up from Halo Brewing Company in Toronto, Ontario, we have Magic Missile. This is an Australian pale ale that comes in at 5.5% ABV, 34 IBU. It's dry hopped with a dry, smooth flavor and hints of tropical fruit. It is bottled and occasionally available. It looks like it is on tap right now in their tap room based on the check-ins that we were seeing on Untapped. And it sounds like a really good, just nice dry hopped pale ale.
Number 4 on our list comes from Ninkasi Brewing Company in Eugene, Oregon. This is a critical hit barley wine. It's 11.7% ABV and 100 IBU. It's rich and malty with 16 hop varietals, and this is a yearly release that they do and also bottle.
Our brewing company in Holland, Michigan offers Dungeon Master Black IPA. This is a 6% ABV, 101 IBU Black IPA. So, just one IBU
Just
above that.
One bitter.
Threshold where your tongue starts to go like, oh, whatever, it's all the same. This has hearty roasty notes and is dry hopped with Falconer's Flight hops. It's on tap at the brewery currently.
Yeah. Rounding out the list, from Ardwolf Brewing Company in Jacksonville, Florida, we have Plus 5 Charisma, also my favorite named beer of the entire list. It's a Belgian strong dark ale that clocks in at 9% ABV. As is typical for the style, you got a lot of notes of dark fruit and burnt sugar. It's boozy, and they have bottled variants of the red wine barrel and bourbon barrel aged versions available at their tap room right now. I have actually had this beer on tap at their brewery, and it was freaking awesome, so I would really assume that both of these variants are probably great too. Ardwolf does some really cool stuff.
Nice.
And as always, if you're looking for more information on those beers, you can check out our website, draftmechanic.net, click the show notes. Danielle will have those available with all the information you need. And now it's time for the beer segment. Danielle, you thought it would be smart to talk about homebrewing today, and I'm all about that.
Yeah, after that segment about a homebrewed RPG campaign and our final round, which talks about homebrewed RPG campaigns, I could not talk about homebrew in the beer segment
Makes
between them,
perfect
could
sense. Yeah.
Now, I do want to preface this saying we are not authorities on homebrewing, but I wanted to give you some good places to start and some good resources that if you are interested in homebrewing, that you could go to and, have a little bit of knowledge to start off with. Everywhere I looked, there were sort of 2 books on homebrewing that were universally recommended, and we actually own both of these books, and I've used them a number of times to get supplemental information for a lot of these beer segments. They're very helpful, they're easy to get through, well organized. The first is The Complete Joy of Homebrewing by Charlie Papazian, and the second is How to Brew, Everything You Need to Know to Brew Great Beer Every Time by John J. Palmer.
Nice.
These are both available in soft covers, so you don't have to spend a ton of money to be able to get them, and they have really good information. I can't say one is particularly better or worse than the other. They are a little bit different in the style that they're written. Check them out, see which one is the best for you, or get them both. One thing I do want to start with is that when you look at homebrewing, there are 2 types of brewing you'll probably see mentioned. There is extract brewing, where you don't start with whole ingredients and you start with extracts made from your malts, and there is whole grain brewing. Neither one is particularly better or worse per se, but they are different and you may have to take different processes depending on whether you're brewing with extracts or you're brewing with the whole grain hops. If you're looking for a starter kit particularly, there are a whole ton of them, but here are some recommendations that I found that were kind of agreed upon across the board to start with. If you're looking for something that is sort of a one-size-fits-all, not particularly fine-tuned for anything specific, you can go with the Mr. Beer Premium Gold Edition. This is on Amazon for I think like $50 right now, and it makes 2 gallons. And it is a really good starting point for somebody who doesn't really know much about brewing, but wants to get into making their own beer. If you are a serious beer enthusiast and you're looking for a little bit more heavy-duty kit that's got a more long-lasting setup, the Northern Brewer has a Brew Share Enjoy kit, which comes with the glass carboys and all your brewing equipment that you're going to need, and it is recommended for somebody who is maybe not taking that first step into homebrewing, but already knows a little bit about what they're doing and wants to get a little bit better kit setup. I did mention all grain brewing before, and if you want something that is going to allow you from a kit to brew with whole grain, you should go to Brooklyn Brew Shop. They have some brew kits, and all of their brew kits are all grain. So if you're looking to not use extracts, for whatever reason you might be wanting to do that, maybe you want to work with those full grains, Brooklyn Brew Shop has that available for you. And finally, if you're looking for a fancy, high-tech, can sit on your counter and look very cool and you don't really need to do most of the work for it type of brewing kit, we have the Pico Model C. This costs like $450, I think. And it's a coffee maker, but for beer. And you set it on your counter and you put in whatever you're trying to brew, and it does its thing for you. So if you have a lot of money and want to make your own beer, but you don't want to do a whole lot of the sanitization and like having a 6-gallon carboy sitting in the corner of your living room part, maybe the Pico Brew is for you. If you are looking to set up your own homebrew setup, here is like a basic list of things that you might possibly need. You're going to need a fermenter of some sort. That might be a bucket or it might be a carboy. Carboy looks like a big jug. If you are not familiar with that term, it's a big glass jug. You're going to need an airlock and possibly a bung, which is just the thing that holds the airlock into the top of the fermenter. And what that's going to do is allow the gases from fermentation to escape without letting the bacteria that's just hanging out around in your living room, which naturally occurs, to get into your beer, which you don't want extra bacteria in your beer. Mm-hmm. You're going to need a brew pot, so something in which to make your wort. It's just a big pot. Some of them have spigots on them, which is a little bit helpful for drainage, but not necessary. You're going to need a heat source. A lot of homebrew setups or homebrew stores, which I'll get to in a minute, will sell you just a gas burner, but you could realistically use whatever your stove is as long as it's powerful enough to heat a good amount of water. You're going to need some siphon or tubing so that you can get your liquid between your brew kettle and your fermenter in your bottles. You are going to need a cleanser. Now, you could go fancy and buy a special homebrewing cleanser, or you can use unscented dish soap. That's fine. You're also going to need a sanitizer. You can go fancy with that as well. They sell brewing sanitizers, or you can dilute bleach to the appropriate amount that will be told to you in either of those homebrew books if you were to buy them. There is a specific ratio that you need to make sure that all of your equipment has the bacteria out of them from the sanitizer, so make sure that you follow that set of instructions very carefully if you're not using a specific brewing sanitizer. You're going to need a hydrometer, which measures the specific gravity of your liquids, in this case the beer that you're brewing, and is going to give you information about the viscosity and ABV of the beer. And you're going to need a thermometer because certain yeasts need to be pitched at certain temperatures. So if you throw a yeast that needs a lower temperature into wort that is at a higher temperature than that, you may kill all the yeast, which is not great. So you're going to want a thermometer. There's a bunch of common kitchen stuff that is going to be used in brewing, but you probably have most of this stuff. You know, a spoon for mixing, a measuring cup for making sure that you have the right amount of your extract or of water or of yeast or whatever, a strainer that you're going to need. These are all probably in your kitchen right now if you're looking to brew. If you're bottling, you're also going to need bottles and a bottle brush with which to clean them. You're going to need bottle caps with which to close them, and a capper which affixes the cap to the bottles. Beyond that, you can buy all kinds of supplies, but those are the things that you're definitely going to need if you're starting your own homebrew kit. A lot of the kits that I talked about earlier will come with some version of that. If you're looking at the Mr. Beer, it's a more of a jug than it is a carboy for your fermenter. But a lot of, like I said, that Northern Brewer kit comes with carboys. It comes with all of the things that you're going to need to start if you don't have any of those beyond like a spoon. If you don't own a spoon, maybe you should focus elsewhere. Really, the best two resources that I can suggest to you, though, beyond, books and beyond kits is going to be your homebrew supply store. And there are tons of these all over the place. If you think you don't have a homebrew supply store, you may actually be surprised. And I'm going to put a link up to a homebrew supply store search that is on the Homebrewers website, the Homebrewers Association website. So if you go to our show notes and you're looking for your local homebrew supply store, you just plug in your state and your county and it brings up what is local to you. And the local homebrew club. Again, there are something like 2,100 registered homebrew clubs with the Homebrew organization. So if you think that there aren't folks around you who are establishing a homebrew club, you may be pleasantly surprised. I will put that link up as well so you can search. And I know around here, Cabrew is the one I'm most particularly familiar with because we have a couple of friends who are part of that particular homebrew club. But it's just a wealth of information where you can go to somebody who has probably done what you're attempting to do with your beer before and say, hey, I'm making a pale ale that I want to have a little bit more of this flavor and a little bit less of that flavor. I have this set up. What have you done in the past? And to be able to go to somebody who is already familiar with this and ask them for their advice and their opinion is going to be an absolutely indispensable resource for you. So if there is a homebrew club by you and you're looking to get into it, that is above and beyond my best recommendation that you go seek them out. And like I said, I will have links for the homebrew store search and the homebrew club search on the show notes.
Awesome. Well, let's tie it all back together. In our final round, we're going to check in with the Slack channel and ask them about homebrew RPG campaigns.
The following podcast is scheduled for one episode. First, making its way to the ring from Charlotte, North Carolina, and weighing in at one live studio cat is draftmechanic.net.
Okay, every episode we check in with our Slack channel. You can join absolutely free and talk with us at draftmechanic.net/Slack. We always talk about games and beer and all those cool things. But anyway, this time we've asked the Slack, have you ever played a homebrew RPG campaign? What changes were made? What changes would you like to try if you ran a homebrew campaign? First off, Aaron from Boards Alive answered, Quentin created a wonderful homebrew campaign back when we still played D&D 4th edition. He set it in the world of Eberron, but took a bunch of personal license so that he could create a pseudo-steampunk and magic hybrid world where there were airships and robots in this whole post-cataclysm world where everyone lived above the cloud line in mountaintop cities. There was even an adventure below the clouds where we encountered some pretty crazy beasties. It was an epic adventure in which we ended up saving the world from a crazed mobster bent on releasing an evil demon to help him control the world. I just knew Aaron would have something fun to say about this. If you're not already listening to Boards Alive, probably should do that. They talk a lot about RPGs as well and say a lot of really cool words.
You would also know who Quentin is then.
Yes, very true.
Patrick Hillier had to say, being old, I've played just about every type of RPG under the sun. I've mostly played Champions, a superhero-based RPG. I rarely used modules and made up my own villains for the heroes to fight. Maybe a Toyman variant or a Hulk Thinker combined radioactive thing on the loose. I was never very good at developing strong mystery narratives, so my adventures quickly turned into an epic battle Michael Bay would be proud of.
Boom, lots of lens flare.
Indeed.
Will Foy said, alas, no full campaigns, but I have done some convention homebrew one-shots in this vein. I did a Fate Core homebrew at Gen Con for a kids' cereal box themed group of investigators thing in 2016. It was fun, but kind of bubblegum for my brain. I far preferred the setting for Savage Worlds called Pelikoi. It's homebrewed for now, but I keep seeing Brass Tacks Games making progress on it. It's great.
Finally, from Paul Imbeden, we have, every game of Fate is a homebrew. I guess he's responding to Will in that statement. If I wasn't in a Blades in the Dark campaign right now, I'd play the daylights out of Eberron Fate.
Nice. Well, yeah, if you'd like to jump in on some of those final round topics, head over to the website, click the Slack button, join up, and come and chat with us. But that pretty much brings us to the end of this episode. Once again, thank you for listening to another episode of Draft Mechanic. You can find us online, draftmechanic.net, social media at Draft Mechanic, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can also send us an email at draftmechanic@gmail.com.
If you are on Board Game Geek, our guild over there is 2470. There will be a thread up for this episode and every episode. If you have an opinion on something that we've talked about, or just want to give us your 2 cents on something related, you can go over there and we'd love to hear from you. If you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, our next local meetup is going to be on Tuesday, April 17th at Sir Lude Cerveceria. We would love to have you come out, drink some beers, eat some food, play some games, have a great time.
Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Grey Fox Games. You can visit greyfoxgames.com and sign up for their newsletter for the latest. Grey Fox Games, quality games cleverly crafted. And I'm pretty sure that's everything. I feel like I'm forgetting something, though. Danielle, do you know?
As always, I would like to remind our listeners to please game responsibly and tell them that I'll see them back here in 2 weeks for another round.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Draft Mechanic episode 72 is recorded on Sunday, April 8th, 2018 in front of a live studio cat.
Beauty is in your eyes, you are the beholder. You render me stricken. Do not go gently into that gutter line.
Punchboard Media, where we all bring something to the table.
Pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.